We really intend to show over the next several days that the evidence is actually really overwhelming that the president did nothing wrong.
First, the transcript shows that the president did not condition either security assistance or a meeting on anything. Not a single witness testified that the president himself said that there was any connection between any investigations and security assistance, a presidential meeting, or anything else.
A lot of what we've heard over the past 23 hours, over the past 3 days, has been from Chairman Schiff. It's all his interpretation of the facts and the evidence, trying to pull inferences out of things.
So that's just a sample from President Trump's defense team. And to summarize, he didn't do anything wrong. Transcript, they say, it proves that, and Democrats led by Adam Schiff just call him Shifty. They're making stuff up. By the way, Schiff and the other House managers spent 3 days providing what I would argue is tangible evidence. And here's just a small sample of part of what I thought was a really powerful closing argument last week.
We just saw last week a report that Russia tried to hack, or maybe did hack, Burisma. Let's say they start blatantly interfering in our election again to help Donald Trump. Can you have the least bit of confidence that Donald Trump will stand up to them and protect our national interest over his own personal interest? You know you can't, which makes him dangerous to this country. You know you can't. You know you can't count on him. None of us can.
Now, the president's been attacking the lead impeachment manager for months now, but many people are saying this tweet, it crossed the line into witness intimidation. Quote, Shifty Adam Schiff is a corrupt politician, probably a very sick man. He has not paid the price yet for what he has done to our country. Now, we also have some new evidence besides the explosive comments from John Bolton that we discussed at the top of the program. An audio tape has been released from a donor dinner attended by our president and indicted Rudy Giuliani associates Igor Fruman and Lev Parnas. Now, you may remember that Trump has said he doesn't know these two men. On the tape, well, they seem to know each other, and they discuss the ambassador Maria Ivanovich, a career diplomat whose only crime seemingly was doing her job.
Basically, walk around telling everybody, wait, he's going to get impeached, just wait. I mean,
get rid of her. Hooray. Okay, get her out tomorrow. I don't care. Get her out tomorrow. Take her out. Okay? Excellent. Do it.
By the way, of course, Trump did get rid of her, and the tape also shows them discussing Ukraine.
How's Ukraine doing? Don't ask. They've been fighting for so long, they don't know what to do without fighting. Yeah. How long will they last in a fight with Russia?
Not very long.
No, I don't think very long. Without us, not very long.
Without us.
It all brings us to the battle over witnesses. Now, before the break, we looked at the politics involved. Now we get to the legal issues. Former Solicitor General Neil Katyal penned a piece today in the Times. Now, with a headline, John Roberts can call witnesses to Trump's trial. Will he? He asks. And I'm going to read just a portion of it for you. Quote, this isn't a matter of Democrats needing 4 moderate Republicans to vote for subpoenas and witnesses, as Trump lawyers have been claiming. Rather, the impeachment rules, like all trial systems, put a large thumb on the scale of issuing subpoenas and place that power within the authority of the judge, in this case, the Chief Justice. I want to bring in our guest, former federal prosecutor Mimi Rocah. Mimi is also running for the Democratic primary for district attorney of Westchester County in New York. Mimi, as always, thank you. So we were listening today, and there was a name we haven't heard, John Bolton. It's like we're living in a parallel universe here. He drops a bombshell. It turns out that the White House has had this for the better part of a month, maybe closer to 2 months. And reportedly, a lot of Republicans are none too happy about this finally being disclosed right now. But we went through the politics of it, from the practicality of it. It seems to have such a relevant firsthand account to what happened. It's crazy to have a trial without somebody who can, put you in the room, right?
Right. I mean, you said parallel universe, and that's exactly what's going on. We're having this hearing where they're talking about facts. The Democrats, I think, as you mentioned, have really already laid out a meticulous case based on all of the evidence that was presented in the House, that there was this concerted effort over time to pressure Ukraine to do what Trump wanted them to do for his own political benefit in exchange for releasing the aid and getting the meeting. But meanwhile, at the same time, right, you have playing out in the news both this Lev Parnas, Igor Fruman evidence, showing them, consulting our president, advising him about Ukraine, and doing exactly what the witnesses talked about pushing out Marie Yovanovitch. And then you have Bolton saying he had face-to-face conversations with Trump where Trump said, I want to withhold the aid until they do what we want to do. That is as crystal clear of a factual dispute as you can get. Factual disputes should be resolved in a courtroom or in a Senate chamber where people are under oath and there are rules, not in the media. And so that just emphasized why we need to have that more evidence, more hearing at trial.
And we're going to get to a few of the moments from Saturday and today, Andrew, but I'm curious, do you believe the focus today on the Bidens was that Republicans believe, or at least the administration believes, that there's going to be an inevitability here that Bolton's going to have to testify, and they're not going to be able to, keep all Republicans on the reservation? We mentioned at the top, at least two already seem to be solidly in the camp for witnesses. That if you're going to call witnesses, we're going to want a Biden too. Do you think that's where the machinations are going, or it's just look at this other shiny object, forget about Bolton?
I mean, there's been some talk of that privately from some senators. As I reported last segment, Pat Toomey has been trying to sell a one-for-one witness swap within the Republican caucus. But the way the president's legal team framed their defense today, it was, well, the whole Democrats' case rests on the fact that there was no rational explanation for the president's activities in Ukraine. So trying to establish a source of concern where Hunter Biden or Burisma is concerned, to their mind, or at least to their arguments, if you pull the thread on that, it could undermine the entire Democrats' defense. Maybe I don't know if you think that approach would work if they were able to puncture that hole in the manager's case.
Well, it shouldn't work for this reason. One, we're still, even if, and I don't, but even if we credit this idea that Trump was somehow really about rooting out corruption in Ukraine, which is so ridiculous on its face, given that there's no other country that he's taken this action on, no other company that isn't involved with the word Biden that he's taken on. I mean, there's so many reasons.
Rudy Giuliani,
right.
Lev Parnas, and Furman are the three champions of
But even if we were going to credit that, the way to do that as president is not to withhold aid and pressure a foreign country and have this whole back channel. The way to do that is through your Department of Justice, your Office of Legal Affairs, the Mutual Legal Assistance Treaties. Now, we threw Barr's name out there, which is a whole other topic, to the Ukrainian president, but this was not going through the real channels of our justice system, which it would have if it was a real corruption. So all of this stuff about the Bidens should be completely irrelevant. But we all know that that is it. They may come in, and so I do think overall it's an attempt to distract from what the facts are, which is what you do when you don't have a lot of good facts yourself.
But there was I go back to this parallel universe, and I'm watching today Ken Starr get in front of the Senate and say, and we'll play a clip that basically, impeachment is such a destructive tool. The division in the country that could result as a consequence of this, be careful where you tread next. I'm saying to myself, Mimi, if I could pick three people of the 330-some million Americans, the last person I'd have to make that argument would be the guy from Whitewater. So, and again, this is a short clip here, but you'll get a sense of where Ken Starr was going today.
Those of us who lived through the Clinton impeachment, including members of this body, full well understand that a presidential impeachment is tantamount to domestic war, albeit thankfully protected by our beloved First Amendment, a war of words and a war of ideas. But it's filled with acrimony, and it divides the country like nothing else. Those of us who lived through the Clinton impeachment understand that. in a deep and personal way.
Does he think literally 100 men and women had lobotomies that they don't remember? He's the guy who took us down this road, and now he's saying, oh, God.
So, somebody tweeted, does Ken Starr know that he's Ken Starr? Which pretty much sums it up. I mean, irony is just dead at this point. Yeah, and look, I mean, his whole, we haven't even talked about their constitutional argument that he and Dershowitz, are going to be making, which is that if there's no crime, it's not impeachable.
Well,
right?
if you could, because this weekend, and I'll credit Fox News, Chris Wallace, he pushed Dershowitz on this argument that you need to have an actual crime here to even have an impeachment proceeding.
The conduct has to be criminal in nature. It can't be abuse of power. It can't be obstruction of Congress. Those are precisely the arguments that the framers rejected.
I want to talk about the framers because you keep bringing them up.
Right, I do.
In Federalist 65, right, Alexander Hamilton, certainly one of the framers, argues that a criminal offense is not essential to impeachment. George Mason was one of the people who came up with high crimes and misdemeanors. I understand, and he managed to include things like misconduct, abuse of power.
Again, now we're up to Exhibit 3 of this bizarro world we're living in. He made the exact counter-argument back in the Clinton impeachment, and now it's like, never mind. But they chose principals that had records to be the voices in 2020 on why the president should be exempt from accountability. It's like, I don't get the logic of why they picked who to do what message.
I mean, it could have something to do with who's willing to defend the president in this. I mean, Alan Dershowitz, I think over the past couple of years has tried to pass himself off as this civil libertarian. I'm not defending Trump. We all knew that wasn't real, and now he's coming out clearly as a real Trump defender. There just aren't a lot of constitutional scholars, I would say, who are going to get up and make the argument that Dershowitz is making, because it's just wrong. I mean, Chris Wallace, good for him. I mean, anyone who can read the Federalist Papers, anyone who understands, you just use common sense. First of all, they didn't have a criminal code when they were writing the Constitution, so they couldn't only have been thinking of the kind of crimes that we think of now.
But they even gave us an EG, didn't they? They said, for example, foreign interference in our elections.
Correct.
I mean, talk about the prescience to pick that example, and now as a high crime misdemeanor. Listen. Everybody is going to make their own populations they're trying to appeal to, but I just strategically was confused as to the messengers and the message. I would have thought it'd been much better to be like, this was not a perfect phone call. This was a mistake made by the president. But, we're only months from an election right now. Let the people decide, that kind of a thing. But there's been zero contrition or zero acknowledgement of an abuse of power. It just seems to me.
I think that's because Trump won't let them make that argument. And that's why I go back to who could he get to stand up and say, this isn't even impeachable. There was absolutely nothing wrong with it. Only Alan Dershowitz, Pam Bondi, you're not going to get real scholars doing that.
Mimi, I had a couple of procedural questions I wanted to ask about. The first is, in the last segment, the Trump tweet relating to John Bolton that we showed the audience, and in it he says, I never told John Bolton that the Ukraine aid was tied to investigations into Democrats. I've seen some people saying that this explodes his potential claim to privilege, which late last week we were hearing, hey, if Bolton testifies, the White House is going to claim executive privilege and stop him or at least put it in courts. Does that tweet impact it? Does he lose privilege because of that tweet?
Absolutely.
Why?
And some of us have been saying that back when he would tweet about Don McGahn, for example. Same thing. You can't use any kind of privilege in our system of justice, not just in a courtroom, but in a Senate chamber like this, as a shield and a sword. So you can't say, you can't ask me about it, but I can come out and talk about it. Once you come out and dispute the facts that you're claiming are privileged, you've opened the door. And that's what I was saying about a factual dispute. Okay, so Bolton says this, Trump has now come out, he didn't have to, but he's coming out and disputing it. And Mulvaney also, I think, put something out today which disputes Bolton. Well, where should we resolve this? In tweets? In the press? No, in a place where people are under oath. And that is why it is inconceivable to me that these senators or the Chief Justice do not now say we must have these witnesses.
They can still challenge in court and take more time with the process if they wanted to?
I mean, they could raise it, but it's so facially waived at this point that if the Chief Justice is going to serve any function other than being the potted plant that some people have been saying he is in this proceeding, and I know he's trying to appear neutral, but there's a difference between being neutral and just ignoring what's going on in front of you. And so he could rule on this in an instant. Any judge could.
And then it comes back to where we started on the political of this. If the judge rules, the optics of a political party en masse trying to overrule the Chief Justice about hearing what 3/4 of the American public believes we should do is to hear from witnesses, specifically Bolton, I don't think they'd go there, but I've been wrong many times here. Do you believe at the end of the day that we're going to have a moment where Roberts is going to have to make a decision?
I think I'm more optimistic than I was that the senators are going to have a moment where they finally say, I mean, we're not asking them to do much here. It's just vote for witnesses.
Do you want to see Roberts on the spot like that? Do you want to see him put to the question?
No, because I'm afraid he'll fail and then I'll just lose all faith in the justice system. Right now I'm holding out for the judiciary and I'm afraid to see what would happen. That would be crushing.
Mimi, thank you as always, not just for the time, but best of luck here. You have an interesting spring, summer, and hopefully a fall ahead of you. Thank you as always.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, when we come back, we're going to take a break from impeachment for a moment and take a look at another scandal here that's not getting a lot of attention given what's going on the Hill, but it still involves the administration. This one involves Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and his argument with a reporter from NPR. The facts, they are in, and they show Pompeo was fast and loose with the truth, and that's all part of a pattern we're seeing all too often. Stay with us.